think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up. But you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself and reservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself and reservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
And welcome everybody to another edition of Political Unmuted. Whereas I am always delighted when I get somebody new on the show or some of our visitor speakers. And it's so exciting. They're so knowledgeable and clever, and it's a joy to see them. These are the people who've been with me from the beginning. These are the people whom I love, and they are just fabulous. And it's just such a joy, guys, to be with you all again tonight. Thank you so much. And sort of, I have it from their lips that they are especially knowledgeable on today's events, and that they're going to share that deep knowledge and insight with you all. But first of all, so welcome to them and welcome to you. Lovely to see you all. And I realize I'm talking too much, but can you remember that my computer was completely broken last week, and I was managing with some old dog, which is now on the floor next to me. This week, only the camera and the second screen is broken, so I won't be able to see your comments as you're making them. And sort of, I look strange to me, but apparently I look okay to you. But sort of, it's just a computer that's not up to the mark, and I apologise to you all. But let's move to the first stage. Let's go, Paul. And moment of the week indeed. I'm going to share my moment of the week, which is unusual, but there you go. Tomorrow at noon, I'm going to Durham Marketplace to meet the marchers to Glasgow. They're coming from Spain, they're marching to Glasgow, and they're holding rallies along the way. They'll be in Durham Marketplace at noon tomorrow, Wednesday the 20th of October. I'll be there. I think Barbara will be there, and hopefully you'll be there as well, because this is the question of our generation, and sort of time we stood up and started shouting. So that's my moment of the week. Let's just see, Laura, what's your moment of the week?
Okay, my moment of the week. I'll be quick because I know how this goes and we all take forever and then we feed into the show. Basically, my moment of the week this week was it was fueled by frustration and annoyance, and that was the Jeremy Vine show that I'm sure people will have seen. One of the, I guess, regular contributors, Nana Akua, was talking about refugees and basically the turn back operations, as it's called, which is anyone who comes on a boat to this country, they're trying to get rid of them. And so they've started sending people out on jet skis with the excuse that if you're on a jet ski, you cannot physically help anybody in a boat. All you can do is turn them around and send them back. And her thing was, it'll save more lives if you let some of them die, because then more people won't try it. And there was an argument between her and another guest called Gemma, who was saying you can't just dehumanize people like that. You need to stop this barbaric operation where we just are fine to let people die and understand that they're actually humans who are trying to get here from war-torn countries. And then Nana was saying, well, they're not, they're coming from France, and that's not war-torn. In actual fact, these people have been stuck in Calais, in the Calais jungle for years, and are now desperate and trying to get somewhere safe. So this whole conversation, and the thing I found interesting about it was that was allowed to just be fine in an opinion on a daytime show. It's fine to let people die because that'll teach them a lesson. I think we all are by this point fully aware of how I got involved in politics. We will mention the name again, Alan Kurdi. It's not okay to let children drown in the sea, certainly not to teach anybody a lesson. And I just found it sickening and disgusting, and that this woman thought she was all that, and she was so amazing, and she was so beautiful, and she knew everything. And I just it was sickening, and it was disgusting, and should never have been allowed out. And that was my moment of the week, because I guess it kind of fired me up again. I've been feeling a bit flat with politics and our direction at the minute, but just seeing people who have that opinion really does rile me up and does make me think, right, okay, there's a reason for this, there's a reason we fight, there's a reason we tackle these damaging opinions. These are human beings. It's just disgusting and shouldn't be allowed. So that was my moment of the week. Not a particularly happy one, but there you go.
Do you find I think there's a screaming going on in the media now about what they're calling cancel culture and the right of everybody to express their opinion, and how we've got to be open to let people express their opinion, no matter how repulsive and evil that opinion is. And it's all a right-wing plot just to draw us in to giving them a platform. And so we're supposed to sit there and say, oh yes, well that's a very reasonable opinion, and my opinion is, and you don't have to. My opinion is that they are evil. There you go. Thank you for your moment of the week. I relate to it. Who shall we have next? Sam.
So yeah, I've got an exciting thing. And I appreciate this is not the Labour Party think tank, and there are lots of people who watch this and enjoy this show who are not members of the Labour Party, but I am, and I got a place on the Future Candidates programme.
Yes.
Ooh. So I have absolutely no idea what that means. Like, they're not giving us any information about what type of commitment is needed, but hopefully I'll find out next week.
Well, aren't you going? Is there anybody else from Bishop Auckland? I think Lynn Gibson is on it. I think you're going to be the candidate for Bishop Auckland. Take on Dehenna.
Well, you never know. We might not even be in Bishop Auckland constituency once the boundaries get redrawn.
Oh, you'll be Sedgefield.
I will be in Sedgefield, won't I? But who knows? Because that might not happen, because, you know, Boris might call a snap election before then, depending on what his opinion polls tell him. You know, that's what Tories like to do at the moment, isn't it? It's all this surprise election.
What would you say if they tried
anything
to
could happen?
What would you say if they tried to parachute you into Basildon?
Basildon.
Oh, somewhere down like that, Harlow.
That's so funny.
Eastbourne. I mean, what they do very often is they let you have a run in somewhere you can't possibly win to see how you handle yourself, and then the time after that they give you somewhere a chance. If you do well, they give you somewhere a chance.
Part of my application was a really big rant about how I think local people should represent local people. So I would have to stick to my guns and say I don't want to go to Basildon, please, and thank you.
Then jump out of a plane. That's marvelous, and congratulations. I am disappointed though, Sam, that you didn't mention your automatic monorail super.
That's so funny. So apparently Shildon, cradle of the railways, is getting some kind of automatically driven monorail that can also go on the road transport pods for 2025. And the best thing about this was the first thing I heard about it was reading it in the Northern Echo, and people contacting me and asking me if it was an April Fool's joke and if the Northern Echo had got the wrong day. I mean, I'd love transport pods.
Right. I mean, it's just fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they were looking for a place to sort of test it out and sort of. I mean, driverless. They won't last 10 minutes in Shildon, will they? But I must confess that when I read it, I did get have you seen the Simpsons episode where the monorail comes to Springfield? I thought
that's what Neil's just said in the comments. Shelbyville got one and it put them on the map.
So anyway, lovely. Thank you so much. Congratulations. You'll make a fantastic MP, a really caring MP, and let's hope that you progress and the Labour Party sees your value. Paul, moment of the week.
Apart from the brilliant job that our regions did on Saturday on Socialist Night Live, big shout out to them, because Mark put in the comments about I'm back on the tech side of it. He had a challenge, but he did really, really well. So very proud of them. I wanted to bring attention to the accusation in an American magazine that Boris and Carrie Johnson broke COVID-19 lockdown rules last Christmas by inviting a friend to Downing Street. Political campaigner Nimco Ali reportedly joined the Prime Minister and his wife for the 2020 festive period despite strict social distancing rules being enforced in London amid a huge surge in virus cases. So what this was is Johnson expected something of others that he was unwilling to adhere to himself.
That's unusual. That's not normal for Johnson.
They have not denied that it happened, but they have denied that they broke any rules. So they're not going to say that didn't happen. But
no, they made him sit in the garden and talk to them through the
They made rules because they make up their own rules. But the last, it's an interesting, this is an article in the Morning Star, and it says, at the very last it says, in October 2020, Ms. Ali landed a key role as a Home Office advisor on tackling violence against women and girls. The post, thought to pay out £350 a day, was not advertised before being filled.
Now, sort of listeners, what you won't know is that before we came on, we were all sort of chatting, and Paul said, "Oh, I don't have it. My moment of the week is useless this week." I think that's the best one so far. Sorry, Laura and Sam, but I mean that's just fantastic. I mean, sort of, you heard it first on Political Unmuted. There you are, the direct scandal raised by it's outrageous. The only thing that worries me, Paul, is that. How many times have they caught Johnson in a scandal? Nobody gives a shit, you know?
I think they do. I think they do. I think there's no political weight behind it and there's no media weight behind it. I think people do care. I've said this before. People do care. Like, it's just skimmed over in the media far too much. It's like the media don't care. The media will let Johnson get away with it. Like, you know, a lot of people have admitted that they would just do anything not to have Corbyn as Prime Minister. Like, the whole thing was battle against the fact that the Labour Party were a membership-led organisation. Let's not have normal people in politics. That's what it's all been about all along. So they're still not willing to go after their boy.
Thank you. And last moment of the week, Stuart.
My moment is the week. This is kind of more like an update of my life than a moment of the week. Last week I was advertising the fact I was publicly speaking. This week it'll be the fact that I did a public speak to people. We went up and I've never been so terrified in my life as I was right then, which was surprising for me. You know, I did my best. My eyes barely left that page as I stood there, knees shaking. But we got through it. And when I was there, if you remember my story about Socialist Train Man, who helped me out on the train, he was there. You know, life just gave me what I needed that day.
Next time, Sort of, will there be a next time? Have you been marked as somebody worthy of note?
Well, I would hope so.
Good. Fabulous. I mean, I saw the picture in the on social media of you all stood there, but of course I didn't hear anything, and I didn't know how you were feeling. You're a hero, Stuart. We all love you on this show. Yeah, absolutely fabulous. Okay, let's go. Oh, right.
Now it's time for the big story.
And tragically, the big story was the one that broke right at the very end of the week, when that poor MP was so tragically murdered, and the way the news broke was particularly tragic, because first of all you heard it was a stabbing, then you heard that he'd gone to hospital, and you were praying in your heart that he might recover, and then the news broke that he died. He leaves 5 children. Apparently he was a lovely chap, and that's from both sides of the house. And what a senseless act. Laura, have you anything to say to us?
Yeah, so obviously I'm sure our viewers or listeners will know about the death of David Amess, Conservative MP for Southend West. I think before that he'd been an MP for Basildon. He's been an MP for years and years, and by all accounts he was, I've never met him, but by all accounts he was a really nice man. He was, very kind to a lot of my friends who I know who have been in Westminster. And it's the second MP to have died by stabbing in their constituency in the last 5 years. Obviously, we'll all remember the death of Joe Cox. That really hit us all really hard. But not only that, it's a third one to have been attacked in 7 years. There was another MP before that who was stabbed, and it just begs the question, yes, I'm sure I will have had many political arguments with somebody who was a Conservative. I'm sure we will have had disagreements, and I wouldn't have agreed with everything that David Amess voted for or wanted or campaigned for. That's fine. Doesn't mean that anybody deserves to die. You can have disagreements. That's what politics is all about. And this is just absolutely devastating that somebody who went, if we boil it down to its simplest form, as a trade unionist, somebody who can just go to work to do their job and end up not coming home at the end of the day to their children is absolutely devastating, and it's terrifying. And I think they've arrested somebody, a 25-year-old man. They're talking about terrorism. I don't really know the ins and outs of I don't think it's been released why it happened. But it's horrific, and it's just really upsetting. And, I'm sure all of our thoughts just go out to all the family and all the friends at this time. I can't imagine getting your head around that. Just, you send husband out to work and he doesn't come home, or your dad, it's just awful. And I think some questions need to be asked about the safety of MPs. I realize politics at the minute is it can be quite vitriolic. There are there are clear divides between left and right and extreme right and all of that, and people take on little bits that they want to believe for themselves, and certain people express that in a violent way. I think there needs to be questions asked about the safety of MPs who are just trying to do their job, who are trying to do the best for the constituents that they serve. especially in something like this, it was, it was a constituency surgery. So you can find out where your MP is. This is the one because you're not getting into Westminster. It's like a fortress, but you can see your MP when they come back to their constituency. And that is where you voice your concerns. That is where you go and say, actually, I don't agree with this. And you should be able to voice that. It appears that once again somebody has chosen that opportunity to make a statement, to make a political statement in the most severe violent fashion, and it's not okay. And we shouldn't be in a position where we feel like our MPs need to have security guards. The whole point about politics and debate is that you speak to each other and listen and try and come up with some sort of understanding. And yeah, I'll be interested to see if we can get to the bottom of why this one happened. Obviously, we know that the murder of Jo Cox was very, very much a far right-wing person who disagreed with her ideals on, I guess, socialism and everything. Yeah. So yeah, it's a question of safeguarding in a job role. I think it's going to take a long time to sort of unpick everything that happened, and certainly for the family, I think it'll probably take a really long time to accept and understand what's happened and try and move past it. At the minute, it's just all really raw, and it's not nice. No.
See any way, Laura, that we might be able to improve the security of MPs at, say, surgeries without damaging the free acting nature of our democracy?
Well, this is a tough one, isn't it? Because, and I can see in the comments, there's a lot of people sort of echoing my thoughts as well. But I think you have to tread carefully here. I can very easily say that I disagree with everything the Tories do. And I can very easily say that I can see the path that they've laid out that would lend itself to a more right-wing rhetoric. But I cannot agree with the murder of anybody. I can't agree with violence as a way to make a point. And so safety does need to be paramount. Just because we disagree doesn't mean anybody deserves to be killed or attacked. It is really awful. And I can see, people are angry, people are upset, people think that there is some I guess, blame to lie at the feet of the Conservatives and their last 15 years of rhetoric that has sort of led to this violent attitude. Those conversations can be had. They can be had. But ultimately, what as human beings, what we need to do is say it is not okay to be violent and to attack other people. And it's certainly not okay to kill somebody while they're doing their job. And I'm sure we can all agree on that. I'd find it really sad to get to a point where we have to make sure that every MP has a bodyguard or a suite of police officers around them, because let's face it, we don't have the police officers, and the Tories have seen fit that we don't have the police officers to be able to do that. And then again, that's just going to feed into more violence and more aggression and more frustration that, okay, so we can police Tories because they're worth it, but everybody else isn't because there's not enough to go around. So you can see where this is going. You can see where the conversation goes. We need to more talk about being respectful and having debate and learning how to debate and learning how to talk to each other and be able to disagree without this aggressive tone towards it that politics seems to be heading down.
I'm going to ask you one more question before I move on to Sam. But I'm going to make some really heartless and aggressive statements first to you now and then later to Sam, and they're not the things I necessarily would personally believe, but I think the questions need asking. And the first question I would ask is, do you not think that there is a sense that the Tories have brought this on themselves? They have constantly ramped up the rhetoric, ramped up the vitriol, particularly on Brexit. They've set one set of people against the other set, divide and rule. They have interest, and the Tories are responsible in large part for introducing this much more I mean, you're thinking of Richard Holden in Northwest Durham, they have actively ramped up the viciousness of politics in order to come to power on a law and order ticket. And do you not think that in a way they are now reaping what they've sown? Be careful, Laura. It's
a really interesting question. It's funny, as you were talking there, I literally wrote reap sow because you shouldn't always just reap what you sow. Yes, I think there is an argument for that, and I can see, we've talked about it on the show many times, how the whole political landscape in the UK has gotten more and more violent, more argumentative, more sort of pushed towards the right wing. And yes, we've seen the racism and the homophobia and all of that comes from the Tory government at the minute. But none of that is okay to lead into murder. This is murder, and they're talking about terrorism. Yeah, okay, there's hatred, there's vitriol, there's anger, there's frustration. But you can't just go, oh, well, you've got what you deserved, because we as people we can't accept that as human beings. We just can't, whether you're right, left, parent, wherever.
If frustration and anger made it okay to murder, no child would reach 16. Sam, I've got my second question to you. And it's this. There are many jobs where regularly wives send their husbands out to work and they don't come back, or they come back maimed. Soldiers go out and are blown to pieces on a regular basis. There are many people, and people in, firemen who fall into fires, and who are attacked by the very people that they're trying to save. I'm going to ask you, one of the Scottish MPs, and I missed the name, has basically told the MPs to man up, and that MPs generally have a very cushy life, and yes, they are abused, but councillors are abused just as much as them. And then there's been these two tragic acts. Is there a sense in which, if we do the kind of things that Laura was alluding to, like putting a guard on every MP, having bouncers at the door of every surgery, that really this is just MPs being too soft on themselves? What would you say to that argument of that Scottish MP?
So there's a couple of things. One of the first things I learned as a teacher was that if you're in a crowd of noisy children, one way to make them listen is to talk quieter. It doesn't work with all children, but if you raise your voice, they raise their voice, then you've got to raise your voice, and at the end someone is going to reach the limit of how loud they can make themselves. I can't remember exactly where I've seen this, but I'm certain, even if it's anecdotal evidence, I've heard, those plastic screens that you might get between yourself and somebody maybe in a post office. I've definitely heard anecdotal evidence that they actually increase violent behaviour because people know there's a barrier between them and the person they're talking to. So I think once we start placing guards at MPs' offices, what we're doing is creating an expectation of violence and allowing people to have that little bit of outlet that they think is expected, perhaps. And what we need to be doing all the time is de-escalating, working on stepping back and diffusing the situation rather than creating an expectation of violence and aggression. Saying that, what was I offered this week? I was offered a personal alarm. I have yet to hear a personal alarm saving anybody's life, but if you've got any examples, I'd love to hear them in the comments. It is. I mean, dealing with the public is always going to be dangerous because the public are a wide range of people with a wide range of challenges. But at the same time, once you likening local councillors and MPs to people who are going into war and should maybe expect to be damaged, I think we've lost track of what the MP or the councillor's job is. People say to me all the time, "E, you're so brave." And I say to them, isn't that really sad that you think to represent your community, you've got to be brave? It shouldn't take bravery. It just should take listening and being able to talk about what you've heard. That is what the job is. So yeah, definitely time to think and reflect. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Dogs are always much more aggressive on the lead. Yeah, absolutely right in that respect. And I love the comment about de-escalation. How would you suggest we might de-escalate the vitriol in politics?
It is hard, especially when you put into the mix social media. Today has been a terrible day on social media for me, because people are angry and I am available. If I wasn't available on social media, they wouldn't be able to get at me. But at the same time, they also wouldn't be able to get at me when I can help them. And I find that a really difficult sort of thing to balance. But I personally am not responsible for all of the antisocial behaviour in my town. So it's really, really hard. But unfortunately, whenever you get a conflict, especially Facebook amplifies that conflict by sharing it among more people, because all they see is something that is causing attention, something that is helping their advertisers. So I think one of the ways we can de-escalate the conflict in politics is by having more face-to-face conversations rather than online engagements.
Fabulous. Yes. And abolish Facebook. I think that would be.
Yes.
Paul, I do have a related question to you, and and it's a question that everybody's been assuming that the death of this poor chap is comes from a growing vitriol and viciousness in politics, but that's not true, is it? We don't know that he was drawn to this violence because of the growing viciousness of politics. In fact, if anything, all the guess will be is that he was drawn by something completely different, and killing an MP is so out of the ordinary that I don't think it's linked to the rows on Facebook at all. I mean, am I right there or am I wrong? Is Sam right when she says that the way to stop MPs being murdered is to de-escalate politics in general? Or will we always have, and I'm going to use this word, extremist people who go beyond acceptable norms for their own reasons, be it mental illness or the fact that they've been converted to some very extremist ideology?
Right, I'm going to be really careful here because obviously this is an absolutely tragic event, and so sorry to the family, and it's horrific that's happened. I don't think that our structures help in this way, our political structures. Like, we've got an elected aristocracy, so people see MPs as being like these people with power. The people with power should be the people, rather than like a hierarchical structure where it's seen that these people, and they have very limited power. You know, you've seen what the government have done. The government are acting like in a certain way. The Conservatives all vote the same way. They've got the power, and the power's actually coming from outside influences like the oil lobby and all sorts of different things. The power isn't really lying with MPs, but it appears to be that. You've got this elected aristocracy where you've got this layer of people who are who appear to be powerful, so they will become targets. They will also become targets because of the way we are conducting ourselves, and because the way it appears that there is a massive layer of deceit in the halls of power. And I'm not saying this is what happened here. You are absolutely right. No one knows what happened here. Some people are saying it's a terrorist attack and it's linked to Islamic extremism, which I don't know. It was very interesting to see them very, very quickly leap to that, because the guy was Somalian and perhaps a Muslim, Somalian origin, but British. It was because they didn't make that leap very quickly at all when Joe Cox was murdered. It took a very, very, very long time for that to come out. So it's very interesting that terrorism link has been there from almost straight away. So if it's terrorism, then I wouldn't necessarily say it is linked to the recent behaviour of MPs or anything. That is to do with years and years of foreign policy behaving wrong and one horrible person. You know, like one, because they've said he's acted alone as well, which I'm really confused about the definition of terrorism here, if he's like not acting as part of a cell or whatever. But but the way people have been conducting themselves over the past few years is absolutely appalling, and we can actually see this in the behaviour of some people. There have been quite a few right-wing commentators who've said this is terrible. Some people blatantly blamed Angela Rayner because she'd made Tory scum comments at conference. She called Tories scum, and they were saying this is what gets people killed. But then, like, we look at Tommy Corbyn, Jeremy Corbyn's son, his tweet, and he tweeted that I wouldn't have had a dad today if Darren Osborne had been successful. This is the Finsbury Park terrorist. Is it any surprise that happened when there were headlines like this and obscene comments from politicians flying around on a regular basis? Dan Hodges has some nerve lecturing the left on hate speech. Now, Dan Hodges has a column in the Daily Mail, and had printed, this is basically the left's fault for the way they talk about the right wing being scum, or criticising what they do, or saying they're dishonest or deceitful. But he'd also printed, 10 days after Joe Cox's murder, 10 days after, he printed an article with the headline, Labour must kill vampire Jezza. Like, you know, where, like, they can't have it both ways. They can't have it where actually, you must be really, really kind to these people who are talking about, like, gunning down people in the sea, and that being okay, and actually not rescuing people or actually killing people at sea isn't going to be a murder anymore. Like, Priti Patel's considering this. Like, that is horrific. Those murders are just as horrific as this murder, but that's state-sanctioned murder. Now, you know, we have to have our only weapons. People, it's been a really interesting chat as well, because people have been saying about whether we should be violent in socialism or whatsoever. We have very limited options. We will be, like, if socialists rose up and were violent, they're going to get murdered very, very quickly. That is what history has told us. That's what history has told us about communists, socialists. We will get murdered by the state. That is simply if you rise up. So we really don't have that as a weapon, even if I disagree with violence personally, but even if I didn't, it's probably a stupid strategy. But, like, our only weapon is to call these things out and tell the truth.
I'm going to interrupt you because there's the Chartists. They had the physical force Chartists, and the guy
didn't have tanks then. Didn't have tanks. Didn't have semi-automatic weaponry then. Didn't have.
The guy who was in charge of the army was quite sympathetic towards their aims, but he said, "The fools, we have the physical force, not they." And the state has always had the advantage. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. It's an important point, but so, like, they can't have it both ways. They can't say that the left shouldn't criticise the right. What they're saying is they want to get rid of any criticism of these people, even if they are acting in bad faith, which we know, like, Boris Johnson is acting in bad faith. We know a lot of these people are acting in bad faith, and I'm not saying this isn't related to the current case whatsoever. This is related to the debate around that. So I want that to be very, very clear. I'm not saying anything about the poor MP who died, although, like, people have mentioned that he had very, very different political views that people would have disagreed with, and I've been happy to disagree with him while he was here. But, you know, like, look at what's happened to Diane Abbott. The vitriol aimed at her. At one point, she had over half of the abusive threats on Twitter were directed at her over any MP, you know, like, and it's all, people think it's really funny to have a go at her. People think it's really, really funny to have a go at this person who's clearly very intelligent, had a great career, a very capable person who's had bad days for whatever reason. People think it's okay to talk about raping her and murdering her and those kind of things, but it's not okay for the right wing. Now, this is a terrible, terrible discourse that we've got going on at the moment. This is a terrible situation. It's an absolute mess, because people, if you're gonna have standards, and I'm not gonna go around saying that someone should be murdered or raped or any of those things. That is just normal. That's the way I behave in my life, and I'll not condone anyone else saying that to any political leaning whatsoever. I would expect that of everyone who's behaving, but that's not the way people are behaving in politics at all. So that's a side issue from what's actually happened here, because, as you say, we don't actually know what's happened here.
Thank you. Last question to Stuart on this, and we have overrun dreadfully, Stuart. This guy wanted Southend to be recognised as a city, and so Boris Johnson announced it, that they're going to make Southend a city. Now, do you think that this is a touching memorial, or do you think it's a cheap misuse of the situation?
I think it's cheap political manoeuvring. I mean, if you wanted a more fitting memorial, they could seek greater protection for all public representatives in law. When the news broke about this, I was actually stood with a bunch of MPs, and the police came over and they said, "Who's an MP? Obviously this has happened. We need eyeballs on you." Anyway, the joke was that me and my colleague Kerry, we were expendable. Right? But it shouldn't be like that. Everybody shouldn't, who isn't an MP isn't expendable. And one example is social workers. Social workers have been asking the government for greater levels of protection in the workplace, along the lines of that of first responders, like the ambulance service, firefighters, police officers. And the government said, no, it'll get in the way of you doing the job. It'll put people off coming to work with you. If the government want a fitting tribute, make sure everybody who has to go to work and do a job, face to face with people like MPs do, is going to be safe, protected in law, that there's going to be more deterrence in law to stop somebody even thinking about doing this, let alone getting, a chance to do it.
Thank you. Thank you. And sort of something perhaps everybody would agree with. I can't see the comments you're making, but apparently they're very good. Please make them. Sam will be taking us through the comments after the main show, and we are so interested in what you've got to say. Right, everybody, my team. We now have 20 minutes left, and we have 3 questions, which is 7 minutes each. So if you straight over 1 minute 45 seconds, you've taken more than your fair share. All right, so just watch the clock, people. Stam, COVID response. Apparently it's a disaster.
What a surprise.
Who knew?
I've been saying this for the last 2 years. Oh my God, nearly 2 years, close enough. So yes, this is the report that says the COVID response has been one of the UK's worst ever public health failures. And what I'm hearing from Tory voters is, oh, well, it was a pandemic, it was always going to be terrible, but we had a good vaccine rollout. And again, I just feel like, once again, history is being rewritten by people who are struggling to cope with the reality that our government was negligent and sent people who tested positive for COVID into care homes to infect all of their friends in a situation where none of the staff had appropriate training or personal protective equipment to have a chance at saving lives. And that is the reality of the situation. And don't tell me that they didn't know or we had no idea. We've been warning of a new pandemic since 2015. At least there was a 2016 pandemic preparedness report which told us that we weren't prepared, and they did nothing about it.
Thank you. Paul?
So we've said this many times, haven't we? Like, everything that we have said on this show about the pandemic, about the way they behaved, about herd immunity, about all those things, it is true. This report finds everything that we have been saying throughout the entire time, like a really bad plan, executed really badly. They wanted originally to go for herd immunity. The things that they've denied as well. All of it's true. It's quite shocking. I think, to elaborate a little bit on what Samantha said there about the way Boris Johnson is treated. It's like, oh well, he's trying his best, like he's some sort of incompetent toddler. Like, oh, he's not even trying his best though, is he? If my son tried that hard being 4, I'd be quite annoyed with him. I'd be like, no, you've got to actually try and take this seriously. He was on holiday all the time. He's on holiday again. He's never taken his job seriously. He's not even trying his best if he were a toddler, but he's not. He's the Prime Minister of the UK. He's embarrassed us all. He's actually like, it should be criminally negligent what he's done. It won't be. It isn't criminally negligent because he can do whatever he wants apparently. But I don't know why we're giving him any sort of time of day at all.
Thank you. Stuart, I mean, one thing I'm hearing on the news at the moment is the fact that we've got 46,000 new infections a day. Because we're a victim of our own success, because we rolled out the vaccine so quickly that now it's beginning to lose its effectiveness at a very important moment. We're the victims of our own success. I mean, what needs to happen, in your opinion?
We need to stop, squandering our real opportunities. We had a head start on nearly every aspect of this pandemic, whether it was, the data and the analytics that were going on, whether it was we got the vaccine first. We had all these opportunities and we somehow miss every one of them because we have a government who just, dawdle along and spend the time finding ways to put money in people's pockets. And it's just wasting time and killing people.
Laura, is it here to stay? I mean, are we going to have
COVID?
To live with endemic COVID?
Yeah, COVID's here to stay, absolutely. Just like the flu was, just like millions of other diseases have been until we get a decent vaccine. I think the thing about this for me is that somehow the Tories have played like a master stroke. How have they managed to convince an entire nation that they've done amazingly well? It goes back to exactly, and I had this written down as well, exactly what Samantha said. They are rewriting history. Like, thousands and thousands of people die. No one goes to the first Cobra meetings. We knew about this the November before it got here. Nobody did anything. We should have been up in arms, but we just kind of just like go with the flow. The next thing happens, and the next thing happens, and the next thing happens, and then it gets like fluffied up by the government to go, oh well, but vaccines though. And it's like, for God's sake, how have you managed to pull this off? Your PR guys are incredible, and you've managed to beat the British public down to a pulp where they can't be asked to think about it anymore. They just want to get out of their houses and go, okay, then Laura, fine.
Maybe, Laura, it's the fact that life is so hard for so many people at the moment that they haven't got time to think about it. Yes. Next question. Thank you. Sorry to be rude to everybody. Liverpool Labour. What the hell is going on, Paul? You have 3 minutes starting now.
So in Liverpool, Luke Akehurst has been put in charge of the selection selection process, and Luke Akehurst is the arch right winger on the Labour NEC. He is a man who really, really dislikes any sort of socialism, any sort of left-wing politics, massive enemy of Jeremy Corbyn, etc. So in the new non-factional way that have been factional, he has been put in charge of the selection process of councillors, etc. in Liverpool, which has led to no socialists being selected to run as candidates there in probably the most socialist city in the UK. We love Liverpool. We think Liverpool's an absolutely class city. So solidarity to anyone who's out there in Liverpool tonight. We do love you very much. So yeah, this is a process that will end up losing Liverpool, losing Labour. Losing Liverpool for Labour. You know, the city of Liverpool will be lost to Labour, and they will not forgive and forget. Look at what they did to the Sun. They know what solidarity means. If Labour does not show solidarity with their beliefs, with their working class values and their passions, then they will withdraw their solidarity for the Labour Party. This is extremely important, and the arrogance of the people who are in charge of this process needs calling out again, and needs calling out again, because the Labour Party is going down a bad road.
Stuart, have you any comments about it? What would your solution be?
I mean, I don't want to make it an argument between right and left, because from what I can see of the candidates, they've just picked people who have nothing to do with the area, have no experience of campaigning, you know, are not linked to their communities, and all the people that are, you know, community champions, you know, embedded, rooted in their community, have been passed over. Those are the people who are going to win things, but also the people who are going to make the real change that's needed, because they know what's going on. They know who to talk to. They know where the power is in their communities.
Laura, is this a process of pissing off your foot soldiers?
Isn't everything in the Labour Party at the minute? Yes, 100%. It really is. Like, and the thing about, like, what Paul was saying and Stuart were both saying, it's not about left and right, and they don't know what they're doing. I actually think they know exactly what they're doing. They're not that naive to not understand that Liverpool, of all the cities up and down the country, is the most socialist and the most full of solidarity and the most backing for working class people. Then it's almost like they know exactly what they're doing. We just don't understand why. Why are you doing this? Like, what is your end goal here? Because you're doing nothing but damaging the name of the Labour Party and what it stands for here. So that will be my question: is why?
My question to you is do you not think it's a case that the left is saying this isn't about left and right, sort of, we don't want to fight left versus right, and the right is saying, yes, sort of, we agree with you, but we're going to destroy you. I think that the right are focused on a war, and the left are sort of too busy trying to sort of say we need to all be friends.
Well, it depends who you talk to, isn't it? Because you've got a lot of people on the left who are quite happy to fight the right, and a lot of right wingers who are quite happy to fight the left. And there's such, I think, the defining factor here now is that there seems to be such a definite line between left and right now, whereas previously I feel like there was, you know, a bit of interchangeability, a bit of, you know, oh, well, we'll move this way for that and move this. But now there seems to be such a line between the two. It is an all-out war for a lot of people now on, no, you can't do this is our party, and both sides feel that. And I've seen a lot in Luke Akehurst's tweets, the vitriol and the anger and the aggression towards the left that he has, and the arrogance of how much he thinks he's so right, and he is right in the other sense of the word, and it's awful to watch. But, you know, Liverpool has traditionally been socialist, and they make no bones about that at all. So to go in all guns blazing against that they're making a point here.
Sam, thank you, Laura. Sam, last quick question. If we lose Liverpool, how damaging will that be?
I definitely think the Labour Party needs to look at what it is and what it's for. I think there's comments about, the Labour Party's comments in the comments saying the Labour Party is trying to destroy itself. I think when we've got unions disaffiliating from the Labour Party, that's something that should worry us. So I assume that there is a vision for what the Labour Party is trying to be, and I just wish I knew what that was, because surely surely there's a vision. I don't know what it is, and I'm worried about that. And I think, unfortunately, I've read certain people in the Labour Party say things like, the red wall is gone, we've lost our heartlands, there's too much demographic change, and we should be looking at other communities that we've never won before in the South. And I'm worried that the Labour Party is maybe forgetting where it came from, and that's a problem for me. Yeah.
Thank you. I just think that they know you lop off the tops, and Liverpool has been such an inspiration to the people of the left, particularly in its opposition to the Sun. And these people know that if they destroy Liverpool, a lot of people will lose heart. I think it's an important battleground, this. Final comment. Should we force MPs? Back to thinking, should we force MPs to meet face to face? Should we force GPs, Stuart, to meet their patients face to face? Should we try to force them to do that?
I think we should support them to do that, but I don't think we should be forcing them in the slightest. I know the government is pushing for the idea that the GPs should be forced to meet patients face to face, and that there will be some kind of rating system where people could go on and leave a review, and there'd be in an Ofsted kind of fashion, GPs named and shamed, which sounds awful, considering GPs and the NHS as a broader idea has been wholly underfunded for decades now. We're getting to a position where GPs are looking at other ways to meet people, simply because if they go back to face, there's going to be less money to care for people.
Going to be less time to meet people. Laura, is this not a case of a privileged section of within the NHS? Consultants are the worst, big GPs and next with it. They're semi-private and they're a law unto themselves. Is it not right that we sort of actually make them do the job properly?
I mean, I think it's right that we make everybody do their job properly, but I think we need to, the argument between nationalising the NHS and privatisation and all of that is completely separate to keeping workers safe. And I think it's really difficult, especially in a pandemic that has been handled so badly, going back to a couple of topics ago, that it's really difficult to know what to do. Yes, people want to see their GPs. Yes, people really need to feel that reassurance and go in and be looked after. But also the people who are working there need to also be looked after as well. It definitely, I feel like our whole society is built around a whole, if you've got the money to pay for it, then we'll look after you. Something that we need to absolutely tackle and need to demolish completely, because something as simple as, what should be simple as healthcare, looking after people, going back to Nye Bevan, should be a right for everybody, but it appears we are going back on ourselves, and the rich people can be healthy, just like the rich people can be clever because they can go to university, but that's going down maybe a more windy path. But yeah, ultimately we've got to look after people, and if people aren't safe at their workplace, which is, I feel like, has been the theme of tonight's show, people being safe at work, is so important.
I don't think it's a matter of being safe. I think it's a matter of time and money and the number of GPs that there are. And the GPs are just saying that they can't actually see people, so they're trying to find other ways of doing it. Sam, is this therefore not to try and force them to go back to the old way of doing things? Is this not a retrograde step, Sam? Should we not be exploring other ways to try and see people, particularly given the pressures on the NHS?
Actually, yes, I think we should. Mark in the comments says that he's talking to his diabetic nurse a lot more than pre-COVID because he's got them at the end of the phone. That can only be a positive thing. Thinking about women and other people who are affected by childcare issues, you might find that you're able to get a contact with the doctor during a break while you're at work or while you are looking after children that you might struggle to get if you had to physically go to the doctors. So I definitely think that people who want a face-to-face appointment should be able to access them, but I think that we can learn a lot of stuff from how we've adapted during the pandemic, and we should keep things that do actually benefit people. But I do think this is all just, it's so funny, isn't it? Because if you talk to people on the street, the GPs aren't doing the job properly, the refuse collectors aren't doing the job properly, the council's not doing their job properly, the police aren't doing the job properly, and you think, like, is it not much more likely that the government just aren't giving anybody enough money to do what they need to do? I think that's a lot more likely than all of these professionals suddenly becoming incompetent.
Thank you, Paul. You have 1 minute. Sorry to be rude, Sam, but we must finish. Paul, last question. Is it really, as Sam says, just about more money? Is it really just that?
If you want to privatise things, so as all GP practices are now private, they're privately owned, you've got to keep your shareholders happy. GPs are expensive. Nurse practitioners are less expensive. Be a government who gets really angry and gets the public angry about GPs not doing the job right. That means it's much easier for those private companies to skim off the top, because we all know that when things are privatised, you get a poorer service because they need to skim money off the top in order to pay shareholders. That's what's going on.
Can I thank... That's brilliant. And it's particularly brilliant because we finished on time. And absolutely wonderful. You see now, people, why I love my dream team. Thank you, everybody. You've been absolutely marvellous today. Next week, people, given the news of today, the big story is going to be climate change and the government's attempt today to try to quote one commentator, to move from a walk into a jog. As we approach the disaster that's coming to us. That'll be the big story next week, and the poll will be there for you to choose your next one. So of course what's going to happen now is we're going to take a 5-minute break to sort of go make another cup of coffee, and we'll listen to No Pass Around, stretch our legs a bit, and then when we come back, the parliamentary pre-candidate Samantha Townsend is going to be leading us and sort of look at your comments, and we'll hopefully get into a bit of a debate with you. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for coming back after the break. If you can't come back, God bless you. See you next week. Bye-bye.
My name is Jack Atkins and I'm not afraid, and I live and die by this vow that I've made. The only good fascist's a dead one, they say, and around here we are. When I first left all them months ago, told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. Well, for an ambulance driver my shot's pretty sure. panorama we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. I told my mother, now mother, be strong, for the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone, for I'm a real we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast, but you armies of darkness, you best do your worst. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past those first, and around here we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here, no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Keep the red flag flying here.
Hello, thank you for coming and hanging around till all 14 of you on Facebook for hanging around for the second part of the show. This is me. I have brought. I'm muted. Did I mute myself? Muted myself with my knitting. That's terrible. Anyway, right. I had a little giggle.
You muted yourself. You muted yourself with your knitting, did you say?
No, I did not neuter myself with my knitting.
Extreme on a public show. Yeah.
muted.
Oh, right. Okay.
Anyway, yes, I had a little bit of a giggle at Neil's last comment when we were talking about league tables for GPs. And he said, can we have a league table system for MPs where the bottom 10% automatically get recalled? So let's have a quick round.
That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah,
Who would judge
let's have a
what
quick
good
round
was?
on what would make you a bad MP in your league table. And I'm going to be harsh here and say, it's got to be something that would apply both to right wing and left wing MPs. You can't just say voting for Tory policies. All right, Stuart, what would reduce the points for the MP league table?
Let's see. You're going to have spending, aren't you? So how much you spend on your office? That's going to be a good one. What about rating people's sense of fashion?
Yeah, I would have those.
People have worn the same suit twice to a public meeting.
Ooh, that's a bit harsh.
That doesn't lend itself to working class people.
I've worn this dress quite a lot, and it's a nice dress. What else? We're currently in the process of trying to sell what was our MP's old office, which means I've been let into the inner sanctum of what was Helen Goodman's office, and it's so interesting because again, lots of the things people said about her in the common sort of discourse was about how she was in it for herself and how comments about expenses, but her office literally had not been done since the early 90s, and you can tell. There's some really vintage a really vintage gas fire and what you call them, filing cabinets. Remember those filing cabinets? Oh, it was really interesting.
Oh man, Samantha,
Used one today.
I was gonna come up with something like dead clever and deep, like you should lose points for voting against people's like human basic rights, like that vote that went through about should if you're a landlord, your house should be fit for human habitation. You'd think that one will go straight through, but apparently not. Apparently the Tories like, no, we don't need that. But everyone's coming up with so like genuinely cool things, like you lose points for how many shit photo opportunities you go for, like, hey, I'm in a food bank. It's really good. Mark Lumley not replying to emails, you lose points for that. Absolutely. I'm feeling miserably now.
Yeah, there was one recently, and I won't mention a name again, but there was a letter in our local paper, the Northern Echo, saying that my MP had written to somebody to say that basically her justifying government decisions to him was no longer a useful use of her time, and that she wasn't going to reply anymore. And I'm like, okay, first of all, it's his right to hold you to account. And second of all, it's not even you writing the letters. You've got staff. Like, come on. That just blew my mind.
God.
I mean, I hope that it wasn't unreasonable as it sounds, and he had maybe, in a way, I hope he had been like mean to her and aggressive, because that would explain it a little bit better. But no, refusing to explain your government's policy to a voter who votes for you is not acceptable, and would definitely deduct points in my book. Paul, what would deduct points in your book for MPs?
So I would give points to people who stuck to their pledges that they promised in their campaign. Ooh. So if you vote in the way that you told your constituents you would vote, then that would be a thing, because that's an MP's main job is to go down. That's how they can affect lives. They can go and vote. So if they're saying they're going to vote a certain way, and then they, like, let's say, for example, the MP for Sedgefield, Paul Howell, who said he would vote to maintain food standards and then voted not to maintain food standards, that's just a blatant, like, that's just blatantly voting against your pledge. So that pledge was a lie.
That seems far-fetched. That can't have happened, Paul. That seems silly. That seems so obvious.
And now it sounds hypothetical, but it's true. So he did that, and and I think he's done a number of things where he says, "Well, actually, what I meant when I said that campaign pledge was the opposite of what I said." So that's got to be the main one for me, and that would work for right and left wing, wouldn't it? Like if you were Priti Patel and you were wanting to put people saying, "Actually, we're going to murder some immigrants," then. And she votes to murder immigrants like she's talking about at the moment, then, that she's sticking to her campaign pledge. Even though it's evil, that would work for either left or right.
Oh, you know what I would take points off for? MPs saying, to be clear, before they say something. I hate it. Just to be clear, I said...
the thumb!
The thumb. Oh
no, but there's also what was it? Theresa May. Theresa May was the worst for saying what was it? She said two things that really annoyed the life out of me all the time, and it was I'm not gonna remember now. We recognise and ensure. We will ensure. Yeah. Oh, those two, because she just repeated it over and over again, and it was like, yeah, we recognise that. It's like an employee going, thanks, I'll take that on board.
Yeah.
Ignore it.
Oh no, that's the other thing they say is we've been clear that when they haven't been. We've been clear that people who work hard will get paid nice money.
Stuart, stop it!
Have you been on that training course already? Gestures.
God.
Strong and stable.
We commit. It goes with everything. I might keep that.
Do you know why they do that? Do you know why they do that? Because pointing, because they found a lot of people in politics just want to point at people. Like it's quite an authoritarian thing for someone to for a lot of them to want to do their role. So they're going, right, you, this is what I think, and it looks very aggressive. Take that thumb in, you. That's amazing. Sorry. But that's really what it is.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Jake says points being deducted for jobs being withdrawn before you started. Now I know what he's referring to here, but this is one of the stories that I haven't been able to keep up with all of the work that I've been doing. Can anybody talk me through what happened with Matt Hancock?
The UN thing.
Yeah, Matt Hancock was offered a job as an advisor to help get Africa's economy back on track after COVID, and then he was like, "Oh, thank you so much. This is great." And then a week later, they went, "We've looked into it, Matt. You're not suitable, so we've had to retract the offer." And he's like, oh, "I didn't want it anyway.
I love that response. Will you go out with me, mate? No, she didn't like you anyway. Oh, I love it.
Didn't want your job.
Did anyone see his little video that he put out?
Hey, God.
His little video where he's just going round different food vendors. They're like, "Oh, hello, Matt Hancock. I see things have gone really crap for you." He's like, "Yeah." He put this video out. Honestly, it's absolutely ludicrous. It's worth looking up on Twitter. I wonder if someone could find it for us. But he just did put out a video basically saying, "Please feel sorry for me. I may have been absolutely terrible at my job, but I'm a jolly sort." It's embarrassing.
With his octopus hands.
Yeah. Those ones. Yeah.
Gross.
going back to on a serious note, going back to like security at MPs, council surgeries, whatever. Mia made a really good point that heightened security might put people off attending MP surgeries, as it probably would her. And a lot of autistic and neurodiverse people and people who have been abused might be put off attending because of the security measures as well. As with the case with her with the air travel issues that she's had. I get that too with protests. Do you get that with protests where you try to encourage people to come along and they don't because they think it's going to be dangerous, even if it's like not? You're like, don't worry, it's fine. Yeah, that was a really, really good point. Apparently there's a good George Carlin sketch on meaningless political language. I mean, I've been guilty of a bit of meaningless political language. Sometimes you say things to give yourself time to think, don't you? But the important thing is that you do actually think.
Members will remember.
And that's the step some of them miss.
It's cultural though, isn't it? It as well, because like they're told, right, don't look stupid in front of Andrew Neil. So when Andrew Neil's screeching at you, it's just filler, isn't it? It's filler to make it look like you're confident. And this is why, like someone like Boris Johnson appears to be more competent than someone who actually cares about the response. Because if someone's like screaming in your face and you're trying to think about something, I'm going to have a measured response here, and I want like a moment to think about it. You look hesitant. Whereas he's just like, oh, piffle, and everyone's like, oh, look at him, he's funny, isn't he? So.
Yeah, and I've had that in the last sort of couple of days. There's certain people, town councillors in Sheldon, that think you can just shout at the police and then you'll get more police. Well, it doesn't work like that. But I think the public probably see him as more of a, he's got fire in his belly and he's this and he's that and he's going out there. He's not getting anything. In fact, he's making it more difficult for us to get more police in Sheldon because he's burning the bridges and destroying relationships we've built up for the last 4 years. But never mind, So I think it's really interesting, isn't it? What people want versus what will actually solve the problems aren't always the same thing.
Is this like chucking water on a mogwai to them? Like, so they think shouting at police will make them spontaneously create more police, and then, like on Gremlins, when they like make loads of Gremlins by throwing water on them.
I just wonder how many of our viewers will know what you mean. Hopefully, it's
everyone. Come on, everyone's seen Gremlins.
Yeah, they've all seen Gremlins. They're more likely to argue with me that I don't need more police, but never mind. Chris has been very nice, and he has congratulated me on my promotion at work, and I'm very, very pleased. I started last week. I've had a mountain of IT issues, which means that I had to send my laptop down to Manchester to be reinstalled and sent back to me, but hopefully that'll come to me tomorrow. And he also says that he's got big applause because we sat together for a very short while in the council chamber the other day and just had a nice little chat, but he wasn't very happy because I came prepared with my homemade coffee because I do that because coffee is too serious to leave to chance, right? This is and I often bring it places, and sometimes that offends people. I bring it to people. I can bring a flask of coffee to people's houses, and then they go, "I would have made you coffee, Samantha." I'm like, "Yeah, but you wouldn't have done it right." So let's forward from this.
I did. I remember making you a coffee right, and you approved. So
yeah.
Socialist coffee.
Socialist coffee, yeah. Mark says don't feed the police after midnight.
Is that after midnight, like at a council meeting though? Is that the other criteria? Like if the police turn up to a council meeting, you scream at them, they'll reproduce.
Gosh, yeah, it's yeah.
I mean, if you do kick off badly enough, they will reproduce. There will be more police officers arrive, and if you kick off really badly.
Yeah, this isn't as stupid as we first thought.
Yeah.
Especially if you take one hostage. if you take one hostage, you'll get quite a few police very quickly, I would have thought. Yeah.
Have a vigil. Do a vigil. Loads of them turn up. Hundreds of them will rock up.
Only if it's a peaceful one, though.
Only if it's a vigil.
Only if it's a peaceful
for,
one about
for a
like,
woman.
For a woman who
got murdered by a police
had a problem.
officer.
Yeah.
No, it's too soon for jokes. Sorry.
I'm making it all
Sarah.
now. We've made Gremlin and police parallels. This is the end of my career. There we go. A very small peak, and now I'm gonna get sacked from everything.
I think I want to watch
talk seriously about this for a moment, because do you not find that there's a huge dichotomy between the police and what's clearly going on in so many things? There's so much bad going on about the police, and it's so obvious. And yet, the local police with whom you're dealing with all the time, they're just absolutely fabulous people who really care about the community and are very upset that everybody's so nasty to them. And there's this huge contrast between what's going on at the very local level and actually this kind of picture which is emerging of the institution as a whole. And don't you find that similar for politicians as well? That in fact, many of the local politicians you meet, even the ones who have the most appalling views, actually do care very much about the local communities in a kind of sort of retarded kind of way. But the fact of the matter is that sort of
we don't say that word. Sorry.
And yet politics as a whole is so damaged, and sort of there's these sort of, you have all these people trying to do the very best at a local level, and the wider picture is going wrong. And I wonder why.
It's the difference between an institution and a human. So humans who are police can be nice people. Institutionally, at the moment, the Met Police, for example, and other police forces have massive problems. Politicians can individually be nice people. The institution of politics is not really working very well. That's what it is for me.
And it's possible to do both. And this is, it's possible to criticise the institution of the police, which I am happy to do. And it is also possible to get along with your local neighbourhood policing team, which is absolutely crucial if you're a local politician. I think this is another thing that, again, County Durham, we don't know how good we've got it sometimes. Our police team have been consistently rated outstanding by the people who inspect police forces, and we still have local policing neighbourhood teams, which a lot of places don't have anymore. And I obviously wish my community police team was stronger. I wish we had more than 2 police officers and half a sergeant, which is what we've got. We share a sergeant with Sedgefield, but I know that in other places they don't even have that, and they're just on response teams all the time, and it's just basically when emergencies happen and they get some in. So I think there's definitely worth recognising what's good as well as what's bad. And like Paul said.
So Sam, so just pursuing my thing, Sam, the fact is that you've got all these really decent people, lots and lots of ordinary people with good aims who care for the community, and we are utterly failing to influence the bigger picture. And sort of, so what's the way to change that? To sort of, I was watching David Olusoga, and he was talking about the people, the Victorians, And so many, I mean, Victorian society was totally flawed, but you had all these Victorians working like crazy to reform it and getting into positions of power and changing things and for the better. Now, how do we do this nowadays? How do we make a change? And it seems to me as well, just chuntering on at you a bit, Sam, as well, is that when I grew up during the 1960s, the flower power era, we all went to university, we came out of university and descended upon society in a very arrogant and patronizing way, I presume, sort of trying to make it a better world and really trying to do that. Now, is that happening nowadays? Have people given up on that kind of sort of, and if they haven't given up, why are we failing? Because it strikes me that the world is just getting worse and worse. How do we change the world?
I think from my point of view, there are an awful lot of ways for people to get engaged with the police, especially our police force. You can sign up to sort of be a civilian that comes in and observes things and gives feedback, and you can sit on the complaints panel as a civilian and give that perspective. But people are busy. I think I said this last week, people are busy working 3 0-hour contract jobs while looking after the kids, while getting the shopping from Tesco and everything's out of stock, so then going to Asda and so I think at the moment people's lives, people almost don't have the luxury to engage in voluntary activities that make the world a better place, which is sad. And I think that's a real problem at the moment. Anybody else got any opinions on that?
Well summed up.
Well summed up.
Yeah, I agree. I second that.
Yeah.
Did we see Mark's question?
And so does Neil. Sorry, Mark's question. I didn't.
Mark,
have you seen it? You read it.
It's a bit. I think we need violins playing gently in the background.
Okay.
Can we all feel sad for Hartlepool's wonderful MP, who said recently, along with another Tory MP, that it's tough living on £81,000 a year? Also worth adding that Hartlepool's MP has just resigned as a councillor down south. We don't see her. What's she doing? So yeah, are we feeling sad for a person who's getting £81,000 a year, who appears to have no real commitment to the area in which she works?
Absolutely not.
I don't know how he's coping.
It is a woman in this case, but there was a man, wasn't there, a few days ago, who
oh my god, this is the second one. Genuinely, this is a thing that people think.
Well, Boris Johnson said before that it was hard to live on an MP's salary, and he described £250,000 a year as chicken food. So
so then why can't he afford to pay £20 extra for people who need it? Fuck you, Boris. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. You hear this a lot. I think what she said was something along the lines of 80-odd grand a year wasn't enough to attract the best people, which begs the question is, what is the best person?
But it was enough to attract her.
Absolutely.
Simply mediocre.
I get myself in trouble here, but I think, Keir Starmer said similar things where he was like, I was earning lots and lots of money as a lawyer, and then I had the calling for public service, and that's why I'm doing this job. And I'm just like, yeah, you can do good things, but you're not slumming it for the sake of me, right? And I've had these conversations to be talking about people having the qualifications or the being the right person to be an MP. I've had people say things to me before about the fact that we shouldn't be saying blanket statements like we don't want the Labour Party to be full of Oxbridge educated PPE graduates, because, you know, if they're the right calibre of person, we want our MPs to be the best that they can be. And I just think, you know, the type of skills you need to be a good MP are not the types of things you learn in Oxford and Cambridge. It goes back to what I said before about being able to listen to people and being able to reproduce what they tell you through your own mouth when you've got an opportunity to speak to somebody in power. That is literally the function of an elected representative at any level. And you don't need to go to Oxford and do a PPA degree to do that. And I get very angry at the idea that working class people can't represent themselves. I think that's kind of got us where we are at the moment.
I would
think
agree
that,
with that.
what I really struggle with here, though, is this whole idea of, well, what is best and what is better. It's this whole thing of, like, we see it in schools all the time, getting kids to have attainment levels and have like hopes and dreams and aspirations to be better. And it's like, well, what's better? We've clearly shown over the last couple of years that the country can't function without the people who our current government deemed to be unskilled. So who's deciding what's better and what's most valuable? I don't think people with money and I don't think money equals success. I really don't. I think that, you know, having a bit of nous about you and having a bit of care about other people, that's the kind of people we want. We don't want people who have decades and you know, centuries old mansions behind them so they know how things go because they've got so much money. It's just we need to move away from that.
I think I get equally angry myself as an Oxford graduate at the inverse snobbery that suggests that somehow, because you went to Oxford University, you are not fit to represent people and you don't understand the reality of people's lives. And I think that Sam
John, I genuinely don't think that is.
I think Sam hits the nail directly on the head, and you as well, Laura, that it's not about representing the people. You need people who've got qualifications, who have skills, who have intelligence, but you also need people who have the ability to empathize. And it's a whole set of skills. And it's about being a good representative. And I think you as well, Laura, you hit the nail on the head as well. The fact that you live in a posh house does not make you better as a representative of the people, but neither does it make you worse. You can live in a posh, I mean, Tony Benn was the absolute one, sort of that you can come from a very privileged background and still be an absolute spot-on representative. And in a way, it goes back to that very, very silly discussion we had right at the very beginning. What makes a good MP? What skills do you have to be a good MP? And and I think it's worthwhile exploring that and seeing what goes on. But as I say, I do not think that the answer to the Labour Party's problems is automatically to bring in a whole load of working class people who were born in the area and say that's the model we've got to follow. But equally, it would be just as wrong to say the answer to the Labour Party's problems is to parachute in a whole set of parliamentary spads and assume that somehow they know better than all the local people. There's got to be some kind of evaluation of what we need and want from our representatives. And this is exactly what Sam was saying. I totally agree.
Go on then, Stuart.
This is going to sound weird. We do need certain people. We do. We need to select certain people. But it doesn't mean that we want to select rich or clever people just because they're rich or clever. We need to start selecting people with disabilities, with hidden disabilities. We need to select more women. We need to select more LGBTQ plus candidates. If we ever want a chance of a real representation in Westminster, we do need to start to seek those people We need to lay out a framework that engages those people into becoming MPs.
You see, Sam, you never asked me what I thought.
You can't have that in this system. You can't have MPs where you can say, right, actually we'll designate Sedgefield as being I don't know, a disabled woman's seat, and we'll designate that. Like, that's not the way. You could do that with a list system and proportional representation, but you couldn't. It's, if you're going to have a parliamentary representation system, you're not going to get that level of equality. And then also, if you get that level of equality, will it be the case with a lot of all-women shortlists, where it's just simply the women who don't face the barriers that are given, the opportunities to take that? It doesn't remove the barriers that people face if you start saying, well, this person needs to be... I know that's not what you were saying, Stuart, but we do need more people of various backgrounds representing people. How you go about that, I would say dismantle the system and bring it down to a much more grassroots level.
I think that I was never asked the question, what would I give points for and take points off MPs? And my answer was that when I was in a school, I always argued that the strength of the school was the fact that all the teachers were so very, very different. And as soon as you start measuring and scoring them, what you do is you force them to all be the same and to be our teacher, which meets your vision of what our teacher is. But in fact, in a school, children, actually, it's very good for them to meet all different kinds of people. Some who have short views, some who are very gentle and quiet, some people who are loud and brash. And children ought to be exposed to adults of different natures who necessarily care very deeply about their education. And it's the same with MPs, and this is directly relates to what Stuart's saying, that what we need a wide variation of people in the House of Commons who can really represent the full breadth of our society and the different kinds of people we have there, and be different and effective and be a voice. And so I don't think the idea of measuring MPs and forcing them some kind of straitjacket about what we say is a good MP. If it turns out that you're disappointed with the MP you've got a chance to get rid of them 5 years later. You just elect somebody else. That's the way democracy works.
This is why open selection needs to be a thing. Not going through the bloody rigmarole of trigger ballots all the time, where it's just weighted against everybody else. Open selection should be a thing, because then we have the opportunity to get these people involved. And I totally agree. It's not about whether it should just be a working class representative or whether it should be somebody who comes from money, and those shouldn't be the two prerequisites depending on which side of the fence you're on. It should be, this person's a nice person, this person gives a shit, this person wants to work hard. Whether you come from money or not, it doesn't matter. But also, like Stuart said, it should be offered the opportunity, and it's not a ticky box exercise, which is why I have a problem with all women shortlists. And I'm sure I've talked about this before. Yes, we need more women, of course we do. All women shortlists, great, but doesn't remove the barriers that are there for women who can't get there. It just offers more opportunity to the women who are already involved. The same with disabled people and BAME members, and it's just if we could get all that rubbish out of the way and give opportunities to literally everybody, that was an equal playing field, then we could get the best people. But at the minute, we're still working in these parameters where it's well, did you not go to Oxbridge? Well, I'm not sure about you then. And it's pathetic. It's really bad. And we've gotten to a point now where we've got working class people sort of thinking that that's the right, well, that's what politicians do though, isn't it? That they wear the suit and they come from this, and that's what politicians look like. And I think what we need to do is get the education to the wider electorate that actually this person, you're in charge of this person, they're not in charge of you. You get to tell them what you think. That is how this is supposed to work. They are your elected representative. And I think too many people have forgotten that, or just have never been taught that. and that's what is stifling our opportunity for so many people. And it's designed that way. Of course, it's designed that. We all know it's designed that way, especially by the Tories. They love their Etonians and everything. And I'm sure there are, I'm not sure, but I'm going to be nice. I'm sure there are really lovely Etonians who are, you know, caring and
You like them. You like Tom Hiddleston.
I do like Tom Hiddleston. Yeah, okay, fair. Okay.
Another thing which I think is a shame, but people have come to this sort of opinion that their politicians are the person that they've delegated the struggle to. They've delegated, you go over there and talk to those people on my behalf. And I'm struggling with that quite a lot at the moment. People care very deeply about things, but they won't turn up to meetings about it. They won't complain about it. They won't do anything about it because they think it's my job to fix it. And politicians are powerless without people. And because if I say Shildon wants to keep its secondary school, and then I put together a public meeting and 2 people turn up, then no one's going to take me seriously. It's just a politician with a personal opinion. But if 2,000 people turn up, then people who are looking to be elected in the future, like our MP, have to take notice. So it's tricky. Anyway, anybody wants to get involved with politics and wants some help, I'll help you. I'm happy. I am not a pulling up the ladder behind me feminist. I'm very, very keen, like Laura said, to try and help people around me, and I very much think that we've got to do that for ourselves, because the establishment is not going to teach us those skills.
But you face all those barriers. You face a huge number of barriers for being in politics.
Yeah.
Like that's I think that's really important point to be made. Like, you know, there are so many barriers that you face. So, yeah.
I don't. Aside from Paul, I don't think I've met people who are more hardworking than the people on this show, particularly Samantha and Stuart at the minute. Like, you guys really do go above and beyond. And what I find just awe-inspiring is that you don't even talk about it. You're just like, well, this is just what we do. And nobody knows how much you guys do. And it's like, if you two were Tories, like, there'd be bells and whistles and parades, but you just do it. And I think because of that, you guys would just make amazing elected representatives. And I wish people could sort of understand that a bit more, and the people in your areas would understand that that is not something you do because you want the name of it, but because you feel like you have to do the work, and you're in a position to do the work, as difficult as that might be. It's just, yeah, it's awesome. You do amazing work. I love seeing it.
I think as well, Laura, you're right, because people like Stuart and Sam and you and Paul as well, by the way, sort of, when you're working so hard, you don't have time to politic and to sort of kiss ass and meet the right people and go and bitch about people behind people's backs. It's sort of, you're just too busy doing the job. And that puts you at a disadvantage to the political climate. And the net result is that the people who work hardest very often are the people who actually get overlooked, who miss out. So when it comes to getting on in politics, a major problem. And that's something to do with the ethos of politics as a whole, where it's about show rather than about accomplishment, where it's about the kind of person you are rather than your experience and knowledge and work in the community. And sort of and you bang on sort of the four of you bang on a lot about the fact that we need people who are rooted in their communities, and you're absolutely damn right. That's surely the key thing, isn't it?
And on that, never a truer word being said statement. I am going to wind us up. Wind us up? I'm going to wind this up. We've been winding ourselves up all night. Do you have any exciting shows coming up, pal, you want to tell us about?
We've got something planned for half term week. Me and Dan are going to do something Twitch specific. Me and Dan Lewis. We're going to do something Twitch specific.
Oh, from Bywire News. Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't know exactly what that's going to be yet, but I think it's probably going to be something to do with an alternative news show, so where we'll focus on a different alternative news source every day and just talk about it and present the news from a completely different perspective and maybe compare it to what the mainstream news is talking about and the important things they're missing out on. So that might be a bit of fun, yeah. So that might be good. And
we're hoping to have some people on Saturday night as well who are coming to talk about open democracy and advocating for the trials of universal basic income all across the UK. So that'll be a really interesting one. I know it's something that Stuart and Paul have talked about quite a lot on the show, different shows we've done. So hopefully we'll have that on Saturday night for our Socialist Night Live. I think that'll be a good one.
Great. Neil says I need to read out his joke about Cambridge University, so brace yourself.
Okay.
I went to Cambridge University, so I'm good enough to be a politician. I was only there for a day out, but there's nothing said about how long I should have been there or anything else.
Absolutely. Yes, I love that. I love that.
So, and now you have been entertained. Remember that Socialist Think Tank, Political Unmuted Socialist Think Tank is on YouTube, on Facebook, on the podcast, on Twitch. So we're on all kinds of different platforms. Just search for us, and please subscribe to us wherever you see us. And we promise to give you more thoughtful conversation and cracking Neil jokes for as long as we still can stand.
And I guess for anyone who was offended as well by the couple of things, well done Samantha for bumping it down there. So we've had to block a couple of people from the chat tonight. Yeah, it's never nice to be horrible about.
If we had trolls tonight, I apologise. I haven't seen any of the comments tonight. So
it wasn't you, Laurie. You don't need to apologise. So if anyone was offended by those things, yeah, sorry that you saw them, but some people are horrible.
No,
you have comrades here. Contact us if you're upset. We make you feel better.
Yeah. Okay then, we're gonna go. Say bye bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye bye, everybody.
Bye bye.